Okay, this is a test. I'm on my way to the hunting shack Friday, November 5th, and testing out the recorder, making sure the batteries are working and that this tape is recording over okay. So this is a test. The wife's wedding anniversary. All right, here we are, the 6th of November, 1999. First time ever sitting outside making this recording. I know we have never done that before.
Okay.
Not making a recording.
No, I suppose not.
I wonder what is it.
Oh, it's very nice. It's
It's
beautiful.
You're getting the shade.
So we're going to do a round robin here in terms of the results of this morning. This is Todd. The mic's actually right on the top there.
You'll find it. Oh no,
Got out to a noose we put on the northeast end of the property, basically on the orange line on the north end. And it was still dark, about 6:45. Some deer scent, and got up in the stand, caught my breath for about 2 minutes and heard a bunch of shuffling. And I look, and coming from the north right down the blue line was a deer. Didn't look real big, but I did catch antlers. And so I got right on it right off the bat and came into a nice opening, squeezed the trigger, and ping! I didn't get the shell did not fire. So now I'm still looking at this deer, wondering if my gun's going to go off, and debated what to do for about 15-20 seconds. I went rat-tat and tried to got a second shell in, and as I did that, of course, the deer took off like a shot, and I saw it through the brush and heard it for a while and hoped it might come back, but it never did. And sounds like somebody else got him. And so that was about it for my action today. I also saw a fox about an hour later. And
Where was that located?
would have been just northwest of me. There's sort of a little opening there, the northeast corner of our property up there. On to the next hunter.
Hello, how are you? I am very sorry. Hey. This morning I saw
It's working.
nothing more than a shadow just after Todd's entire event took place. Same deer, and just saw the shadow and decided, well, chose not to shoot merely because of the size. I wasn't sure about the size, and so I let her go, and from there it was a continuing saga to the next brother, I believe.
Okay, I was the last to get out of the killer here. I remember distinctly being down in the graveyard at 6:30 looking at my watch. So just about the time I get up on my stand, I've taken my coat off, I'm trying to cool down, and well, no, I didn't have the gun. I'd laid the gun down, and pretty soon I'm hearing noises such that I picked my gun up, and I'm seeing a silhouette out there, and I pull the scope up quick to try to hone in on it, and sure enough, the scope is obviously fogged up. And so now, in fact, I know I looked at it long enough that I'm starting to pump now. You know how I'm saying, if I could have seen it that first time without the scope being fogged, it would have just been a slam, bang, boom, done. But now, can't see through the scope. That's a deer there. I know it's a deer. What do? Do I flip the scope? Da-da-da. I pull it up and I can just see enough in the scope that I say, okay. And then now, is it a big enough deer? Is it antlers? You know, all those things are going through your head. I said, well, opening morning, if it's brown, it's down. It came in the scope, bang, boom, down. And then I'm looking at it, and it looks like a little fawn. You know, it's just this tiny, and it went right down. There was no hesitation. Bang, boom, down. It didn't even flop. And I'm saying to myself, oh, God, it's a little fawn, you know, the shell blew it apart, you know. Half the body's sitting there blown away. So I spent a full 20 minutes beating up on myself, saying, "Oh, why didn't you? You know, you should have waited for the right shot, etc., etc." So I walked down there, and to my delight, here's 6 points on top of the head, and it's a pretty decent looking deer. So gutted it out, and this year, by the way, for the first time, I'm using the technique that I learned this morning on WCCO, where I put the feet up, legs up. Then the blood goes down into the cavity of the deer where the meat doesn't mean anything. Otherwise, the blood flows down into the valuable meat and ends up possibly spoiling it. So we're giving that a try with that deer. So after I finished gutting out the deer, got back up and kind of sat down, relaxed, and celebrated. Had an apple and a couple pieces of candy, and it was about 8:45, 9 o'clock, somewhere in that area. And by the way, I had heard noises. In fact, I heard it sounded like there were 6 or 7 deer all moving at the same time out there. So my attention had been drawn a number of times off to the east, and then all of a sudden I spy a head. It looks like a head that's up in a tree, and I don't know if the deer was feeding or if possibly, my guess right now is that the buck was probably doing its thing with the doe, because the next thing I see is a doe that I'm making out the silhouette of. I fired the first shot through brush, just trying to get it to move, and it didn't hardly flinch, move forward to where I thought I had a good shot. I shot again, and this time, whatever it was, wherever the bullet hit, the deer took off. It took off running, and so I'm trying to come down with a third shell to shoot at it as it's running through the woods, but at that moment I see something really big move back into the spot where I saw the deer originally. Came back on that site, ba-bang, and sure enough, I got myself a 4-point buck, and this one was bigger than the first in the morning. Nice deer. And so I gutted that puppy out, and then didn't have an extra rope, so I walked over to where Jerry was hunting, asking if he had a rope, and then also I thought I might have hit possibly on that second shot. You know, deer will run even when it gets hit, so we did a little effort to look through the woods to see if there were any signs. We didn't find anything, and you know, my gut level is I didn't hit it, but we did try a little bit, and then I headed down to the river and off to the pine tree, while Jerry headed back, I believe, to his stand on the blue line, Todd's blue line stand, midway down the blue line.
All right.
Yeah, okay. I got to
Hit the pause button.
well, yeah. the kill switch. I listened to these guys shooting most of the morning and didn't see much of any. Getting rather bored, so I was sitting there soaking up the sun, and about 9:30 I must have heard something, because I looked off to the west, and sure enough, there's a deer walking down by the swamp edge, and so I got up, and the first chance I could see him, I took a crack at him, and he disappeared for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden he's heading south down a ways a little further, and so I took another crack at him, and it looked like he went down, but after waiting about 10 minutes or so, I went down there and started looking, and I couldn't find a trace of blood or him or anything, so I just decided that that he got away somehow. And
What happened when you came back and tried to sight him?
yeah, well, naturally I'm not used to missing 2 shots, so when I got back, I thought I'd better test the gun out, and sure as hell, I was shooting a foot high at 50 yards, and so it was an excuse for those misses. But I don't feel bad. I'll go out there tomorrow, and maybe I'll get him again, get another chance at him again. So It's and besides, I didn't have to fool around dressing out a deer.
Too hot.
I'm a little bit lazy in my old age.
Well, we started off, got out to my stand about 6:30 on Beaver Point. Beautiful day, just absolutely gorgeous. It was pretty hot, and I kind of just peeled on a little bit and sat on the stand and listened to everybody else shoot, and Dwayne and I don't know if Todd shot or not, but anyhow, I was sitting there and I stayed there till about 8 o'clock. I heard some shooting down on Sieverts Point to the south, and also some shooting to the west. And so I had to make a decision. I decided to go over to my stand in the lowland. And so this was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I walked over there, and I thought I saw a hunter on it, but it was just my imagination. It was a tree that had a lot of moss on. But so I got on my stand. I think it was 8:15. I sat on it till it was about 9:15. I looked at my watch and I said, well, it's been an hour and nothing happened. And so I was going to stick out till noon. And I don't really know what time it was. It probably 10 o'clock-ish or 10:15. I was facing Sieverts Point, and for some reason I turned my head and I saw this deer, and right away I saw the head and the neck, and it looked sleek. It looked like I knew it was a doe right away. I didn't see there was no antlers, so I didn't want to turn. But being a southpaw, it was easier for me, so I swung over on it, and as soon as she got in the scope, I let one fly, and she went down. She bounced right up. She kind of skidded on her shoulder. And as I was watching her, she did this for 10, 15 yards, and finally she went down, and her legs came up, and I guess she died right there. But in the meantime, I was wondering what this stuff was running down my face. It seems that scope came back and belted me in the nose pretty good, and I ended up with a bloody nose, or a cut on the nose. Nothing serious. And so after I got that stopped, I went down.
I see one at the top and one at the tip too?
No, that's just blood. Yeah, just blood. And so I went down and I started gutting her out, but she was behind a log, and it was a pretty good sized doe. And it's kind of strange. Here I am gutting that deer out, and I keep looking up to see if I can see any orange jackets so they could come and help me. But no such luck. Had to gut the whole darn thing out by myself. So anyhow, that was about, I think when I got done, it was 11 o'clock, and I decided I better head in and see how the rest of the boys are doing. I don't want to shoot anymore. Didn't think any possibility anyhow, but so we headed in and met all the guys, and everybody had a little story to tell, I guess, and it's just been a fabulous hunting day. And so we'll turn it over to Doug.
Well, to start off the year of 1999, I took out the four-wheeler for the first time, and I dropped that off. This is the first deer that I haven't hunted on my stand. I actually hunted on Todd's stand on the North Ridge, so I left the four-wheeler on my stand and walked to a stand. And during the daylight, it's you know where you're going, and it's easy to spot the stands, but only been there just a couple times. It was a little bit on the hairy side, I thought, trying to find it, but how it ended up, I actually found it right away, and things worked out real fine. But my excitement is watching the mice and hearing these shells flying all around, but the odd thing is that I didn't think anybody in our party actually shot. So that's it's amazing how you hear things in a different way depending on the wind direction and where you are. So
What about when you got off the stand and headed to Dad's? What was that all about?
at about, I didn't take a look at my watch. went down and wanted to find out to see how far the Todd's north stand was actually to the fence line. So I walked, it would be northwest. Dad is northwest of the stand I was on. And I just took a couple steps and all of a sudden, wham, wham. And that particular shot sounded close, but yet I really didn't think it was anybody in our party, and it almost sounded like it was across the road. It didn't sound real close. But in the meantime, by the time I walked up a little bit, I did, at that point, I saw Dad. He just was in the process of sitting down again, so at that point I didn't bother bothering him, and I didn't think he was going to be just sitting down in case he did hit something to spook it. Didn't bother going to him. So that was at about 9:30, I'm guessing. And then after that, I stayed up on a tree, a fallen tree that was up on the ridge, kind of a clearing area. And I was up on that tree for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then I walked back to the stand I was on and stayed up there for the rest of the morning.
Let's see, Saturday afternoon report. Todd and I decided we'd go out, I think it was about 1:30, or my stand, and hang up that doe that I got in the morning. Well, we left, and along comes Dougie, so now it was Doug and Todd and I, and got down to the lowland, and we were able to hang the deer, and we talked a little bit, and Doug decided that he'd hunt on that lowland stand, and Todd was going to go over to my stand on Beaver Point there, so that kind of left me up in the air to where I should go. Decided that we'd go up to Blue Line and check out Todd's new stand. So which I did. We took a walk up there and found the stand okay and no problem. Climbed up on the stand, and naturally there's no chair there or no seat, so I had to sit on the edge of the stand and kind of catch my breath. I don't know what time it was, but decided I'd stand up. And I was standing there, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I looked out to the east, and I saw a glimpse of antlers of a little deer or a spike deer coming up. So naturally, I took off the safety right away and kind of got myself in position and brought the gun up, and he kept walking towards me with his head down. And I really didn't want to shoot him smack dab in the head, so I kind of waited for a while, and he kind of turned his head at one point there, and I took a shot, and I hit him, I think in the front right, and it went out the left side. He dropped, and he came right back up again, and he ran right underneath the stand, come out the other side, and headed over to the Blue Line, and again, I didn't want to take a shot at his rear end, so I kind of let him go, and I see he was hit pretty hard. So I decided, I followed him and with the scope, and he kind of turned off and headed to the west after he got down about 50 yards or so, maybe not even that. So I let him wait there, and I believe this was right around 3 o'clock. So I waited till 3:30 and took a walk, and I found the blood and everything. And so I got to the Blue Line. I headed south on the Blue Line and found a spot that looked kind of interesting, like where he might have turned in. And sure enough, there he was, deader than a mackerel, with a spike buck, fair size. And so there I was again. Had to clean a deer out. And cleaned him out, and as I was cleaning him, I looked up, and heck, I'm not maybe 30, 40 yards away from Todd's other stand. So I ended up hunting on that one for a while and headed in, so that kind of wrapped up my Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, and it was very successful, and I only used 2 bullets.
Why is that important, John?
Huh?
Don't you always only use 2?
The arsenal out there. I only carry 2 extra.
let's see. I went on John's East stand, the new stand. It didn't have a lot of action other than probably about 3 o'clock. Could see 3:30. Could see in the distance something caught my eye. Looking straight east, John's got a SWAT there. On the far side of the swamp, followed a deer walking along the swamp, and followed it for a minute or so with the binoculars, probably a good 300 yards away. The only other deer I saw looking off pretty much the same SWAT was right in the middle of the swamp, moving toward the north. Got a glimpse of that, and sun was gone, heading toward the beaver point down there by the big pine tree. So those were the deer I saw today, or this afternoon, anyways.
And I just heard something. I heard it, but I didn't see it.
Oh yeah, Doug heard something. He was where were you, Doug? In the lowland?
The first time on Johnny's
Johnny's lowland stand.
lowland. I've never hunted there before.
Okay.
I think that's piece I did. Come to think
Tad and I went out to his new stand, just to the west of the Papa Don's Ridge, and there we stabilized the stand and made it usable. Threw some little carpet up there, and I left Dad there to hunt the afternoon, and then headed over to Jerry's stand right on Logging Road and sat there, and neither of us saw anything, but certainly enjoyed the extraordinary beautiful weather. I walked over to Dad's stand with my overalls on and everything wide open, bare skin totally showing, and I was as comfortable as could be. I passed Todd probably about 7:15, somewhere in that area, and get beyond him a couple hundred yards, and he takes a single shot. So I then position myself essentially where I can see Jerry. Doug could see me, so obviously I should have been able to see him as well, but I can also see Todd, and I watch Todd to get down off his stand. And exactly 7:30 he gets off his stand. I meet him out to the south, and he's telling me the story of how he shot at this doe, and he thought the doe was in this general area. So he heads essentially southeast, and for some reason I sensed that it might be to the north. So I started walking not more than 10 yards to the north, and up bounces this doe and takes off literally straight for his stand. And so my gun was over my shoulder. I pop it off, throw it up, hit the safety, and I take a single shot. And based on my shot, I thought that the deer disappeared. Meanwhile, though, Todd's watching, and he says that the deer goes up and to his stand and up above the ridge, and then he thought it stopped there. Well, as it ends up, Todd has to go to Kansas City, so his deadline is 8 o'clock in the morning. So we go up to his stand, and he does a little back and forth. But of course, he and I are both colorblind, so neither of us can see blood. We head back down while he's headed back to the trailer and to head out for the day. He hooks up with Jerry Lee and tells the story. So Jerry Lee comes back up, and as Jerry Lee's coming along through the area, he yells up at me and says, well, heck, there's a pile of blood here, and that was where the deer had been bedded down. So I brought him up on top of the ridge where Todd's stand was, and sure enough, we hooked up on a trail of blood right away, and took that trail of blood probably for a couple hundred yards to where we dead-ended, literally along the fence, headed west. And so we decided, after probably working a good 45 minutes, to get a couple of the other guys here to help out and get the bloodhounds all out there to check this situation out. And so went back and found Johnny and Doug on Mickey's Point at Doug's old stand there. And we strategized where Jerry went in and took off some clothes, checked in with Dad, let him know what we were doing. And meanwhile, Doug and John and I headed out towards Todd's stand and began following the trail of blood. Well, to make a long story hopefully short,
Too late!
we trailed that puppy. We literally trailed it all the way to the west to where just below Papa Don's Ridge, there's a lowland there, a brush swamp area. And Johnny crossed the swamp, and the rest of us, the three of us, headed straight south. We had lost the blood trail just before that, and as we're headed south, almost at least halfway through that swamp area, all of a sudden Jerry Lee sees blood again where this deer apparently crossed the swamp, and we saw 3 different spots there that identified crossing the swamp, but then essentially lost it. So worked our butts off for nothing, but it was pretty exciting, and all in all had a great weekend. Brought in the deer, hung them up. Right now it's 1 o'clock on Sunday, and we're getting ready to head out. Next weekend we got Papa Don coming up, Dwayne, and then Jason and Ryan are also going to be here. So we'll see what happens then. Bye-bye.
It's now the weekend of deer hunting, 1999. Started off this morning, went out to Uncle Johnny's stand up on top of the hill. Sat there, got there around 6 o'clock? Quarter seven. Then only ended up sitting there for an hour and looked down the hill and back in the brush, saw medium-sized doe. Waited for a while, hid behind the brush, couldn't get a shot at it. Then eventually I could see its tail waving and pulled up the gun, got it in the scope and fired a shot. Pulled it off, pumped it, looked, couldn't see anything. So just sat there for 15 minutes waiting for anything to come up. Nothing ended up showing, so I got down from the stand and tried to take a look down there. Didn't find anything. Found out it was a little bit different looking from down below than it was up at the stand. So went back up and sat in the stand till 9:15. Then my dad showed up and I had him walk down and take a look at the area. And then once he reached the spot, I got down and we searched around looking for some spots of blood. Nothing showed up. So then he decided that he was going to walk over and try rustling up something on the way over to Grandpa's stand. And I then took the stand down on the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, okay, this is Papa Don. I was out this morning, and right after Ryan shot, I had about, one big noise, and I look up, and here's what I think was probably a fawn bouncing to my southwest from my stand, and I got up and tried to put the scope on it right away, and before I got that one in, there's another flag right behind that one, and so there's two of them bouncing through the brush, and before I could get either one of them in, they all of a sudden froze or disappeared, and there's a flash of white about halfway between those young ones and me, and so I went to check that out, and here I think it was a good-sized doe that was going through the brush. At the same time, I was trying to get on the young ones, and she spooked all
Morning to 7.
both of them, and
I headed
then
in
she
from
made
the
one
extreme
leap, and
northwest
she was
end
behind the trees and brush, so I
across
couldn't.
try to spook
Never got
something
on
up.
her either.
I
So
went across
for
literally to the
half
ridge
an hour,
there.
I
There
had
was
my
something there
eyes
that,
watering, trying
that
to
huffed at me
get
12
one
different
or,
times.
one or all of those
He knew
deer
I was there, I
back
knew
in
he was there.
sight.
And then when I moved
they
off,
were all
I
three
thought he was
gone.
headed
I think
towards
they
Dawn, but Dawn never took a shot.
sauntered
Ends up Todd going in
down
this
to
morning,
the
too scared up
alders,
to on his
next
way
to the
to
swamp
Dawn's
and bedded
stand.
themselves in, and
then
I never did see him
later
again.
that morning,
So,
as I'm passing
but
Todd,
right after that, then I saw a what I think is a ferret, and it was crossing over the ridge, and I could have very easily shot it, but I didn't know whether I wanted to or not. And the more I thought about it, the madder I got, because I thought, well, the ferrets are probably killing off the grouse and partridge and eating their eggs and whatnot. And so then I decided maybe I better shoot the darn thing. But by this time it's probably 100, 125 feet away. I was still going to shoot the thing, but it just sort of melted down into the brush. Never did see it again. So that's my hunting story for today.
Yeah, this is Jason. First time hunting in, I figured, about 3 years. Second weekend here. I went out to explore the new land. From the last time I'd seen it, hadn't been here since the logging went through. Ended up taking Todd's hatchet stand just on the edge of the cutting there. Saw absolutely nothing. But after about, have to say, half hour to an hour, heard north of me, or no, excuse me, south of me, about 4 shots, bang, 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 and thought it must be Ryan firing away with a few misses, and sure as heck, a good probably half hour later, the same thing happens, empty a full 5. And I'm thinking Ryan's knocking down about 20 deer north of me, or south of me again, but I again didn't see anything. A single shot seemed closer, and that was Ryan's shot at the doe. I decided, after I saw Dwayne walk across, try and rustle something up in between Grandpa and I decided to move off to Beaver Point there, Johnny's stand, and sat there for probably about half an hour. Didn't see anything, and came on in to call it a morning.
Okay, well, I took the two boys out this morning, dropped Ryan off on Pollocks Point, and then headed north with Jason on the blue line to Todd's stand there, and then took a 5-gallon bucket that I had there up to the new stand that Todd put up in the extreme northeast corner of the property, and sat there for about 20 minutes. It was just gorgeous, gorgeous morning. In fact, we're again recording this outside similar to the first weekend. Today is got to be 65 degrees. It's just gorgeous. Anyways, sat there for about 20 minutes and felt the urge of a healthy crap coming on, so got down off my stand and headed east and went up the ridge a ways and took care of the nature stop, and then stood there on the ridge looking down over the river for about a half an hour. Eventually went down into the cutover there, the state cutover, and got up in the stand that's high up there down in the lowlands. Sat there for a good hour. It was just gorgeous. Had a little red squirrel. I almost shot the son of a gun. He'd go on different trees and sit there, look at me and go, you know, just chattering away, bitching me out for being there. Never saw a thing down there, but again, it was so gorgeous. Heard all the shooting going on that Jason just referred to, and decided that if Ryan had something down, he probably could use some help. So decided to head down that way. Went straight south, veered over on Hatchet Ridge, and then headed straight south on the Orange Line, and eventually got to Johnny's Beaver Dam stand, sat there for about 15 minutes, and then head over to Ryan, where we headed down and tried to look for the deer, the doe that he had shot at. Then I left him, headed over to Mickey's Ridge and Doug's old stand, took off some clothes, then headed straight north to Todd's stand, sat there for about a half an hour, and then went straight east, hoping to scare something up for Jace, but he had already headed south to Beaver Dam Point. Saw he wasn't there, so headed on in here then for lunch today. So I didn't see any deer today, but it sure was gorgeous, and I was pleased that Dad and Ryan had a chance to see something. Maybe we'll see something yet this afternoon again.
Back to me. After sitting down in the lower stand, probably till 10:30, kind of starting to doze off. Got a little tired, and I hear a nice snort behind me, so I quick turn around, and I see a deer good 40 yards back in the brush, just hopping along, running away from me. And I wasn't quick enough. I don't know if I wouldn't have had a shot at it if I would have saw it, but didn't even realize it back there. And then sat for till 11:15, and nothing else came up, so headed in for lunch.
Oh, by the way, tell them about the guns and your sighting. The guns were sighted well.
Then came back and made sure that the guns were all sighted, and mine was only inch low and Jason's was inch high.
This afternoon, after having lunch, ham sandwich, we were talking about how we should head out, and I had the thought that the 3 deer that I saw go into the North Swamp area still be there. So the plan was that Dad would take his 3-wheeler to his stand, and then as take the ridge there and drop down before you head up to his stand. He had a spot where he thought he would move another stand, and so Jace would essentially take place up on the ground, and then Ryan and I would come in from the extreme northwest end across through the lowland there on the bridge they made, crossing the swamp up there, and he would down the trail south and eventually get on to the stand, the new stand that we had built there last year, and then I would travel straight east and then head down through the North Swamp, and to scare something up. So did just that, and I'll turn it over to Ryan in terms of his finding way to the stand.
After crossing from the road up on the northwest end, my dad explained to me the trail to take and where to go, and he split off and went up around north, and we're gonna try to push everything towards us. So I continued down the trail, and the stand came up a heck of a lot quicker than I had expected, and right along the way I saw pretty decent sized grouse on the ground, and picked up my gun, had it in sight, and then decided not to shoot it. I don't know why, but I'm guessing that's pretty a smart move. You'll find out in the future. But so then I just continued up the many steps up the stand and reached the top. Waited there until I started to hear my dad coming from the north, and now we'll pass it to Jason and Grandpa for them reaching their destination.
Yeah, well, it's still Papa Don. We to recap the situation, Dwayne thought we would, him and Ryan would drive the North 40 up north of the North Swamp, and Jason and I would get on stands on my ridge, and so that's what I did when I went through with the Big Red. I got to a stump. I decided it would be a good spot for Jason, and so I sprayed some red paint on that, and then went on up to my stand, and shortly after that, Jason showed up, and then in a short time, Dwayne had.
Did you see me crashing through the woods? Did you see me going back and forth in the swamp?
No. Well, Dwayne's. First thing that happened was when you had Ryan get on my new stand up there in the north end.
Right.
He gets on the stand, and you followed the north border to that swamp slough.
Did you see? I could see you. Could you see me as I was going back and forth?
Well, actually, I was. I saw you, but it didn't. That only took a couple of minutes, and boom, Ryan cut loose and shot that buck. And then all that yelling that you were doing, that you guys had got one. Of course, I don't hear so good anymore, and so I didn't know what the heck had taken place. And so then you, after a bit, then you came down around the swamp trail and hooting and hollering, and so I wasn't sure that you guys had got anything other than shooting away and hollering and everything, hoping to kick something up. And so we were real pleased to find out that Ryan had shot a real nice buck that you kicked out of that the slough close to that new stand. And so that's the first deer seen or shot from that new stand, and that kind of nice, justifies putting it up there anyway.
Well, this is Jason, and my story about the afternoon isn't too exciting. Like you've already heard, we decided to make an attack and try to flush those 3 deer out of the North Swamp. I followed Grandpa out on the 3-wheeler and found his nice big hot orange X and stood there, looked around, actually heard some rustling back in that clearing. Nothing much new. There wasn't anything there, because then I heard the shots fired. We'll pass her on to Ryan for the story.
Okay, so I did travel, and actually when Ryan took off down the trail, I went on to that old stand. That old stand that's there. It's got the blue milk carton on it. I went on to that old stand and watched him walk across till he eventually I could see him on his stand.
Yeah.
And then I got down off, and I actually headed north from that, and then went down to the swamp. And initially I was planning on taking the edge of the swamp, but then I realized the swamp was so dry that there was a good chance there was something just laying in it. So I zigzagged back and forth along the swamp, back and forth, and I could see you easily. I could see Dawn easily. I thought I could see Todd, or Jason rather, as I was walking along, and then Ryan, of course, is right up there, and I'm a little disturbed because every time I look up at him, he's not looking at me. In fact, he seems to be looking everywhere but.
Daydreaming.
But so I had no idea exactly what was going to happen. But I'll turn it over to him. I'll give you a hint. There was a shot that caught my attention.
Well, I reached the top of the stand, and as I was sitting there, I could hear my dad coming through the swamp. I couldn't get a visual on him, but I could definitely hear him. And eventually, then I finally did see him. That's telling how thick that is through there. And then once he did show up, I was looking all the way around, because sounds coming from everywhere. And eventually, scaring the crap out of me, I'm guessing it was the same grouse I had saw earlier, flew up in between us, and I watched it come by, and I'm thinking in my head that there's nothing here, because my dad keeps getting closer and closer, and he's within 50, 60 yards from me, and I was willing to bet that there's nothing there. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, this what I thought doe jumps out from nowhere and's running kind of perpendicular with me, not really right at me, but alongside of me. And so I stand up and take off the safety, put the scope ahead of it, and it just happens to run right into the scope, take a shot, and it keeps going. So I give her a pump, lead in front of it, it runs into it, take another shot, still going pretty good. Wasn't sure if I had connected yet, so gave her another pump, put her ahead, and took another shot, and this time it fell right down. Tried getting up, didn't quite make it, so I'd figured I'd hit a leg or something that wouldn't let it keep running. So then I stop, and then Dwayne yells to me, "You got it?" And I waved at him, and then he starts his hollering for the other ones. Sounded somewhat like some type of Indian, but not sure, Ojibwe or what. So he heads for Jason, trying to get something for him, and it ended up nothing, and came back, gutted her out, hung her up, and then we all continued back to Grandpa's stand.
What was it?
It was a three spike buck.